The second year, it really came to bear because we were rated #1 in the state the first night of practice. For kids to come that far that fast, it was an awareness. The same year we got accused of recruiting because Huey Foster moved in from Shelley, and we didn't recruit him, but the IHSAA did an investigation. And basically, when the dad came and said, my kid's going to play for Skyline, we told him, we already got a lot of good kids. We hope that he's good enough to play. We did not recruit anyone. But it was the beginning of the epic battles. The Skyline versus Highlands, and the Pokies, and the Capitals, and the Boras, and later years, the IFs, and the Bonnevilles, and the Rigbys. It was a fun time to be involved. I just got reminded the other day that we played in the largest attended basketball game in eastern Idaho in 1979. It just so happened that Blackfoot upset Pokie, and Skyline upset Highland, and Blackfoot and Skyline played for the championship, with Pokie and Highland playing for third place in the mini dome, and there were 9,000 people that attended that ball game. That's a long way from meeting over here in the auditorium a year and a half earlier and kids saying, we play football here, we don't know how to play basketball. It was so much fun to be involved with that. The next 5 years, we were fortunate enough to play for a lot of championships and a lot of consecutive trips to the state tournament. And we could have finished first, I think, in many of those years, but luck plays a big part. Charlie Bills, the other coach who had won the state championship, told me it's the biggest part. And he said, every time you almost get there, you're going to need some luck to get through. This is the kind of luck we had. We had Marbo broke his ankle in '79, just before the tournament. Steve Langford had a high ankle sprain in '80. Dave Piper strained his back in '81. Brian Gunderson had a groin injury in '82, and John Schofield had a shoulder injury in '83. No complaints. Kids played hard. We did everything we could. We usually finished in the top 4, but we knew there was a state championship out there, and we weren't going to back off. And when you think about the odds of a very small school, Skyline seems big, but at that time we were about 1,000 students, and we were competing against the Meridians at 2,400 and the Boras and the Capitals at 1,800. The odds against winning the state championship, always in another town on their floor, was about 26-1, because that's how many schools there were in the league back then. This is where I began to understand the phrase that I used with the kids a lot. It's not the laurels, but the race. It's not the trophies, but the chase. It's all about what that season means for each individual group of kids. And I loved every single season. And of course, no program would be tested if it didn't have some low points. And we had our low points. We had a year after going to state, 5 years in a row, that we went 0-22. We worked as hard, we coached as hard, the kids gave us everything they had. It was a tough year. But we learned during that time that any good program can falter. Had the same coaches, the same schemes, the same approaches. We learned what it was like to be questioned for everything that's made you successful. I got called in front of the school board. We worked as hard. We learned how important it was to have total support, and believe me, it still is today. Parents, students, the entire town. It's so critical that you support unconditionally your coaches and your teams, because sometimes they have great years that everything goes right, and other years they have times when nothing goes right. It was during that time that I understood what real support was. Dick Bigelow stood in front of the school board and said, none of you were here when we hired him, and none of you are going to make the decision to fire him. That's my job. It was that same year when a group of 8th graders, led by a guy here in the stands tonight, or in the group tonight, Mr. Dave Hadley and a group, and about 3 days later there was a letter in the paper from the 8th grade team at Eagle Rock that said, we want to play for Coach Lewis, don't go anywhere. And it was also the year that we learned what the history and the heritage of the program means. Every program can have a down year, but if the heritage is there, they're going to be back. And we came back.